It's easy to run out of superlatives here. Europe's largest marshalling yard is also where the longest train in Germany, measuring an impressive 2,700 feet, is put together. The station itself is a gigantic maze of tracks, totaling 160 miles. We want to take a closer look at this and have traveled to Maschen, 15 miles south of Hamburg. Standing at ground level, we can only guess the incredible dimensions of the second largest marshalling yard in the world. Railway tracks seem to stretch as far as the eye can see in all directions. Only when airborne do we get an idea of this gigantic size. 1 million wagons arrive here every year. That makes several hundred trains a day. They all have to be uncoupled, sorted out and reassembled, like a gigantic puzzle, especially when it comes to the longest train in Germany. It transports food, industrial parts, cars and petrol to Scandinavia. To make this happen, the schedule is very tight. The train must be ready in a few hours, but how is that done? 40 wagons with a length of 2,700 feet. We accompany the birth of Germany's longest train. 6 o'clock in the morning. A train is just arriving from Cologne, delivering the final wagons for our record-breaking train. Now, the employees in Maschen have exactly 6 hours to solve this XXL puzzle on rails, and we're allowed to watch them do it. The switcher gets things going. Eric Hilgert is one of them. He uncouples the train, separating the individual wagons and breaking the train down to individual units. A really tough job.
The longest I've ever had was 43 wagons. Some couplings weigh up to 35 kilos, and if you have to lift up to 20 to 30 of them, you can definitely do some damage to your back.
The switcher has to release the heavy iron couplings that hold the wagons together by hand. This gets even more difficult if the train driver stops the train the wrong way. If the connections are under tension, they're particularly difficult to release. The technical term for this is elongated.
A train's elongated when it's pulled an inch or two apart. The screw coupling then becomes so tight that you can't get it to move. I always complain to the drivers when the train's elongated. At 2,300 feet, always having to wait just eats up time.
And the switcher doesn't have much time. Now there are only 4 hours left until departure. Time for the shunting driver to get involved. He must now move the detached wagons. And Wolfgang Paul does this with the necessary calmness.
I've been here 37 years, so it's probably not that special anymore. But that's the way it is. I mean, if it was any smaller, I'd be riding this track right now. You can't really see the size when you sat here on the locomotive.
Only when airborne, the gigantic dimensions can be seen. The task begins. The shunting locomotive pushes the loose wagons to where they are distributed. That, however, is done by a computer, which controls the speed. Wolfgang Paul's only task is stopping the train in an emergency.
I'm responsible for the emergency stop foot switch, so if I fall asleep or become unconscious or can't see what's happening, then the locomotive stops after a certain time. Wolfgang, come in please. 41 to the train. All right, we're starting.
At walking speed, the shunting locomotive pushes the wagons along the track. The shunter can't see what's going on at the front. A third person is responsible for this.
My 2 eyes have to be enough. Now, the watchman stands there at the front. The colleague who checks the train keeps an eye on the front as well. That's what he's there for, because I can't see everything here. When I say I'm starting, then he has to say if something's not right, or shout stop or something, if someone's in the way, whatever. But that hasn't really happened up to now.
1,600 tons are now moving towards the so-called hump. Due to the height difference of 10 feet, the railway wagons roll onto one of the 48 shunting tracks using their own weight. The computer controls the speed using a retarder brake. High-speed switches ensure that the wagons end up on the right track. There are now only 3 hours left. And this is how the puzzle works. The split-up train from Cologne has a total of 32 wagons. The yellow ones have to go to Lübeck, the pink ones to Hamburg Harbour, and the green ones belong to our record train. Here in Maschen, these wagons are now sorted like toy trains. All wagons for the record train are moved to track 2036, where the remaining wagons for the longest train in Germany, number 44724 to Denmark, are already waiting. Watching over the supersized puzzle is the so-called Pumpmaster. It has to be ready in just under 2 hours. From his tower, Christian Möller monitors the rolling. In an emergency, he can take control away from the computer immediately.
This is for all emergencies. For locomotives, if anything goes wrong with it, an accident or something, then I can make an emergency stop here. Or for all the conveyors, this is the emergency stop here to stop people getting hurt.
Christian Möller has been working for the railway for 40 years. For 30 years he has been the Pumpmaster in Maschen. He loves the variety and the challenges of the job at Europe's largest marshalling yard.
At a little station, there are 2 trains a day, whereas here there's 1 train after the other, and particularly from the port, they just keep coming.
The port of Hamburg is the reason why the largest marshalling yard in Europe was built here. A gigantic amount of goods and containers arrive by ship every day. This is why there used to be 5 marshalling yards in Hamburg. The train formation was therefore distributed over various locations, and this took considerably longer, because even then, 2,500 wagons had to be sorted every day. Unthinkable for the longest train in Germany. Train number 44727 is almost finished. Pulled by this locomotive, it is scheduled to leave for Scandinavia in 1 hour. The final check by the so-called Wagon Technician is the last remaining step before departure. And Holger Lang has found something.
This wagon's up for inspection. You can see here, it was last checked on the 5th of March 2009. The wagons are all inspected, wearing parts are replaced. It's like a minor roadworthiness test.
This wagon can make one last trip, then it has to go into the repair workshop. The wagon technician checks that the load is properly stowed and secured, that all doors are closed and not damaged. What's contained inside the rail wagons is something Holger Lang does not normally know.
We don't have to look inside unless we've been specially instructed, or if the doors bulge and there's something pressing against them. Sometimes there's some impact damage, it's been hit by a forklift or something. We just have to make sure the doors are properly locked.
Finally, he checks if all brakes are released. The method he uses is rather unusual.
We have brake pads here. This is the brake shoe. When the brakes are applied, they sound dull. Can you hear it? When the brakes are loose, afterwards they sound bright. Let's take a look here. This should be released. Then it sounds like this when they're off. You can hear if the brakes are off or on.
Everything is fine. The longest train in Germany can set off for Denmark on time. 2,700 feet, more than 40 wagons are slowly set in motion, and that happens 12 times a week. The train runs with a special permission. On all other routes, the maximum permitted length is 2,400 feet. The XXL train takes 3 hours to cover 130 miles. The 2,000 tons are not allowed to move faster than 60 miles per hour. Nevertheless, the train has a braking distance of almost 3,200 feet. The longest train in Germany, one of about 600 trains departing from the largest marshalling yard in Europe every week. This accounts for over 3,000 wagons a day, rolling over 170 miles of rails spread over an area the size of 380 soccer fields. That is the secret behind this impressive aerial photograph.